but more mainly Britain. You know, the British Empire, since you're a student of history, the sun never set. Meaning the British Empire, there was always one part of Britain that is not sleeping. You know, Jamaica, Ghana, India, all over the world are colonies of Britain. Then in the second tectonic shift, the US became very important. In the closing years of the 19th century, the US became the most powerful nation since Imperial Rome. For most of the last century, the US has dominated politics, global politics, economics, science, and even culture. You know, it's through the American movies, the whole world, and disco music and all that. Since World War II, the domination became unrivaled, unprecedented. The U.S., after World War II, the U.S. stood there, you know, looking around. Hey, I'm the only one with money. You see, Japan was destroyed by the atomic bomb. Europe was completely destroyed by the war. And we, the third world country, we were always poor, you know, because we were exploited under colonialism. So the U.S. looked around, hey, I'm the only one here. So I can dominate the world. Until today, they think. So the economic power during the period after World War II was concentrated in USA and Western Europe. You know, the green part of the world. There's a small part, but they control the world. You know, World Bank, IMF, it's all controlled by these Western powers. The yellow part is communist Eastern Europe and China. They were in isolation. They were not allowed to join the World Bank and so on. They are communist countries, they have their own world system. That's during our period after World War II. And the red ones are us, the ex-colonies, you know, Indonesia, Cambodia. We were allowed to, we were integrated in the world economy, but we were told to shut up. Like in America, you have a saying, children should be seen but not heard. Children can be seen but shut up. You know. So we were shut up there. So we have to follow what the West tells us to do. So therefore, in Bretton Woods, in America, in 1944, these big institutions were established. IMF, World Bank, once again, they were dominated by the West. And we just followed, you know, ask money from the World Bank and so on. That is the general agreement for trade, tariffs and trade. Third tectonic shift. Now here comes China suddenly. And this morning talk about the Qing dynasty. So China was asleep since a long sleep, but now they start awakening. Also very poor and fast has awakened. And China's awakening is reshaping the global political and economic landscape. You know, when the dragon wakes up, there's a tectonic shift towards China. During the World War II, you know that Japan is the enemy. So Chinese communists and Chinese nationalists both were allies with the US to fight against Japan. Now, the communists control these four kidneys on this map. These four kidneys, that's where the communists are. The yellow part is controlled by Japan. It's a small part, but Japan massacred many Chinese in Nanjing. So the biggest part is controlled by Chinese nationalists. You know, so that's during World War II. Both communists, the small kidneys, and nationalists were allied with the US against Japan. After Japan was defeated, What happened? The communists and the nationalists started fighting each other. The four kidneys fighting with the green part, and lo and behold, the green part was ousted and sent to Taiwan. So this People's Republic of China was established and have control over the whole of China. So again, the nationalists which control China all went to Taiwan. Now yesterday, 2 days ago, yesterday I think, there was an election in Taiwan. The first Taiwanese president, lady president, was elected. And she actually wants to be independent Taiwan. Because the nationalists, the nationalists, Chiang Kai-shek, actually have one point in common with Mao Zedong. They both think there should be only one China. But this new lady who was elected says that we should have an independent Taiwan. And China, of course, doesn't like it. Because China thinks that Taiwan is part of China. Then came the period in China called the Cultural Revolution. The Cultural Revolution is from 1966 to 76. This was when China was in turmoil. Schools were closed. I have friends there. For 10 years, schools were closed. They were fighting against those who are capitalist rulers, they call it. So they put to death, or they were paraded on the street, humiliated, and so on for 10 years. But in the meantime, Nixon of the United States and his friend, his Secretary of State, Kissinger, went to China during the Cultural Revolution. Because Nixon says we have to bring China to the national interest. Opening to China, that first, that turned the communist giant into a diplomatic partners, adopt American values, and maybe even adopt system of democracy. That's what Nixon said, This fellow Nixon is president of America. Well, if you look at it today, China has adopted capitalism, but it's still communist, but not democratic values. Oh, sorry, I'm in the press. Then came this man, Siem Reap. I was in China in 78. So after Mao's death in 1976, they said no more Cultural Revolution, Game of War, we want to learn capitalism. So I was asked as the United Nations to China to teach them about multinational corporations. And I was the United Nations, I gave them money. I said, I have money. Where do you want to send your lawyers? Ambassador Sun Chuan is a lawyer. And they said, Wall Street, of course. So from communism, they want to go to Wall Street. Of course, I said, do you want to go to Harvard? No, Wall Street. And that time I realized China is going to succeed. Because when they want something, they want the best. And for lawyers, as Ambassador knows, it's Wall Street. For economic lawyers, yes, for international law. So, for almost 30 years, now this is very important, China's economy was growing at almost 10%. It's unheard of in history. This is a country of more than 1 billion people. Their economy grows by 10% every year. It's fantastic what is happening in China. Well, I must say Cambodia is fantastic also. Every time I come here, every year I come here, 10,000 new skyscrapers are built and 10,000 new brown cafes are established. More than 12 increase in GDP since 1978. When I give this lecture in other countries, they say, oh, 10 years. But actually Cambodia has also a very large economic growth. As you will know, since 10 years ago there was no brown cafe. Today I am full of you guys, eating at that. So Cambodia also is not so surprised when you say grow very fast. So, again, this Deng Xiaoping, you should remember him. He is the new president of China. He said, never mind capitalism, but we want to use everything. As I said, they want to learn from Wall Street. So I sent their lawyers to Wall Street, and Chong Rong-Ming, who was sent there, became the head of the Foreign Investment Bureau in China. So I know him from there. So Jimmy Carter, that's the other president of America, started diplomatic relations in 1979. So China and U.S. became very close friends in 79. Well, something happened in 79 in September about Cambodia recognizing the Khmer because China and the U.S. is behind it, but it's not the subject of our lecture. So how did China become so rich? It's crazy. 1.3 billion people become so rich overnight. They have export-oriented manufacturing. So they send export all of their manufacturing from America was made in China, you see. And now I live in America. If you go to Walmart or these other big department stores, all made in China, but also Cambodia, also, but China. So all the growth of 10% is all because of goods production for American markets. The second thing that made China grow is massive investment, construction, here again. So in effect, Phnom-Penh is like a small China model, we have urbanization, because if you have all these mostly ladies who are working in textile factories, just like Cambodia, all go to urbanization. So they all need housing, but of course they live in little dormitories. And all that brings this GDP growth of 10%. GDP is the gross domestic product. I think they understand what GDP is. Zaman is supposed to be first class university compared to AUPP also first. Very rich. You have a job for me or not? So how did China become so do the industrialization? China, don't forget, is still communist. Communists is very strict. But they produce special economic zone near the coast, This is Zhuhai, Shantou, Shenzhen, and Xiamen. Xiamen is where my great-grandfather comes from, China. And they become special economic zones. People can do production there without any problem. They will abandon low labor, several hundred million persons, hundreds of millions move to these areas to produce goods for the American export, for the American market. Now, foreign companies, US and Europe, operate in joint ventures in these cities. So basically, the jobs that was producing for America was created by American companies. Now, I don't know whether you follow the news. We have an American presidential candidate called Donald Trump. Everyone knows. And he says, oh, China, you must give back all those jobs that you steal from me, So Xi Jinping said, I don't steal from you, your companies brought it to China. So ask the companies not to bring it. Now, there is currency manipulation. I will talk a little about that later. What means that the value of they deliberately make the renminbi value very low, so that Chinese goods become very cheap. But there is also the Chinese, they learn very fast. Innovative labor force and management that quickly duplicate Western products that are successful. I think again Cambodia is a good example of that. You learn very fast. what the Americans and technology. Look at this university. This is the high-tech from the best high-tech university. Sorry, I don't know, maybe you can quote me, challenge me in the question and answer. I give you a chance. Okay, so that's why I said China produces so much goods. Every year, the U.S. import from China is the red one. And China's U.S. export is the red one. And U.S. import from China is the red one. And U.S. export to China is the blue one. Look what you see there. China selling to China, U.S. selling to China very little compared to what they buy from China. You see, bigger and bigger and bigger. So in 2014, U.S. exports only 122 billion to China, and U.S. imports 440 billion. So to say that China steals everything from the U.S., it's the U.S. who is buying from China. Donald Trump, it's not China. So what does that mean? Now a little bit economics. China exports to the U.S. all this, and imports, which is the blue one. So the U.S. has to pay, of course, for all that. The payment of the rest is deposited in China's foreign exchange reserve. Like if you spend more, if you spend less than you earn, then the rest you can put in the bank. So China spends very little. I've seen movies, these girls coming from rural areas, like you have the factory workers. And I saw a movie, she says, it's very nice here in the city. In my village there is no electricity. Here there is lights, and Saturday I can go to disco, I've seen like that, girls say. So China accumulates all this money because, they work hard, just like your textile factory. Everything, but America just buy all these products and they have to pay in foreign exchange reserves. It's like China they put money in the bank for, but international money. So that figure there on top is very important. China has no foreign exchange reserve $3 trillion. I don't know what is trillion. Trillion real is a lot of money. But 3,634 billion. So China, US, I said after World War II, I'm very rich. But China now, with the 3.6 trillion, I'm very rich. I can buy anything. They bought the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York, everything. They buy many things in Cambodia, or they produce. So look at it. If you look at the foreign exchange reserve, what do you see? For the 6 countries, anybody? Anybody? Just guess. It's dominated by Asia. It's dominated by Asia. Only Switzerland. So Asia is now, America, not only China is rich, but Japan is rich, Saudi Arabia is rich, Republic of China, Taiwan. Do you remember? Taiwan is part of China, but they have their own. This President China, she has a lot of money. And South Korea, of course. So with this 3 trillion, China can do a lot of things, as we can see in the rest of the lecture. Now talking about population. The population, of course, as I said, China moved all these girls from the rural area, and they used to earn $1.75 a day. But from 85%, the rate of poverty in China used to be 83%. That means so many poor people, dropped to 13%. Now Cambodia also, as I said, is a small China, So Cambodia also, the poverty rate has dropped dramatically. Of course, there's still a lot of poor people, And at the right, you will see that China's wages have increased. Now textile workers in China increased by 40% annually. So now Chinese textile girls, the one I told you who has no lives in the rural area, earn $700 a month. As you know, Cambodian textile workers start with $130. If you work overtime and you're a senior, you can get up to $250. Compared to Myanmar, 110 and Laos, 140. So later when I talk about ASEAN economic community, it's very important to know these figures because Chinese textile factories may move to Cambodia, and that means benefit for Cambodia. Remember, factories move from America to China. Now China is very expensive. Hopefully they will move to Cambodia, but then you have to compete with other ASEAN countries. So as I said, the first one is export. The second one is urbanization. Breakneck urban growth has propelled China's rise in the past 3 decades. Migration from the countryside have expanded urban population by 700 million. The biggest movement of humanity in the planet. 700 million migrated from rural area of China. This is the biggest migration in modern history. And there are, of the 30 cities who have more than 10 million, China has, Shanghai has 23 million, Beijing in 19.5, Chongqing has 13 million, Guangzhou has 12 million, Shenzhen 11 million. I was in Shenzhen when I was invited, remember in 1978, I was invited to Shenzhen, it was a fishing village, and there's only one building, Western style, but, and they showed me around, they were so proud, here is the bathroom, so my wife said, what are they showing? Well, it's the first Western style house. Oh, bathroom, here, this is the kitchen. Now Shenzhen is, skyscraper. Reminds me also when I first came to Cambodia, I lived in Lucky supermarket upstairs. They had 6 apartment units, Western style. And they were so proud of that. Now, of course, every corner you see is apart. So Cambodia is like a mini China. Now, most of the cities share the central planning. Central planning is communist planning. The government decides where you should live and so on. And they don't care where you live. All these girls from the rural areas, they live in production units. I've seen them, dormitories. But I said they were very happy compared to back home. They said, no electricity, no disco. She was saying that in the moment. Single work unit. Their planning focus was on industries. So these girls have to live near the factories, not commerce or community. But in the suburbs, there are luxury apartments that are empty. And the Western prediction said, China will collapse because of this. But they will not collapse because these luxury apartments in the suburbs, they are owned by rich people and they can afford, And again, Cambodia, small village, you will see many empty apartments here also, but they are all owned by rich people. And the government in China, communist government, they are the one who built this building, not private enterprise. So they can build anything they want. And they don't need the $3.3 trillion because this is domestic currency. The $3.3 trillion they can buy the whole world. But domestic, they can use their own currency. So our story today, actually, I call it the rise of China. But basically, in the third tectonic shift, there is a rivalry between US and China. And so, you see, what I want to say is, in the second tectonic shift, America is powerful, but China is rising up. Of course, there are tensions. And as you know, the second part of my title is the rise of China and what it means for ASEAN. I can compare ASEAN to a beautiful lady. And two men, fighting for Mr. what's his name, Obama, and Mr. Xi Jinping. So Obama said, here, I give you this TPP. China said, no, I give you this. So that's the essence of my lecture, the rivalry, and where should you, like Cambodians, stand. Look at this, how strong China is today compared to US. Population, of course, it's not a question of strength. I mean, you just make babies. Sorry. But China has 300, America has 316, and China has 1.3 billion. Population, internet users, China much more than America. But percentage of population, America is 84%. I don't know about Cambodia now. But China only 48%. But look at the internet users. But Facebook is forbidden in China. But production of cars. China is producing more cars than the US. And it's mostly American companies, General Motors, Ford, that produce these cars in China. GDP, number one is America, number two is China. I mentioned the word nominal. Are there many economic students here? No.
They take it.
You know what PPP is? Anybody? What? Full production, purchasing power parity. So, actually, in Europe, GDP by PPP, China is already ahead of the US. But people like to come nominal because they don't like to show China is ahead. So they use nominal, that means exchange rate. But per capita, US is of course number 10, and China is still very poor. Per capita income of China is only number 88. So again, China GDP is very big, but so many people there, you have to share it quickly. So per capita income is still very poor. Billionaires. Oh, this is interesting. China is supposed to be a communist country. Communist country is against the rich people, during the Cultural Revolution. But now they have number 2 in the world, 213 billionaires. Some of them are building hydropower plants here in Cambodia. I know some of them. Cities is more than 10 million. More than 1 million. 10. China is 160. I don't know. I know only 10 cities of China with exports. So that's a comparison. As I said, these two are big rivals. But this, so the rivalry is shown in this picture. There's this Xi Jinping on the right, of course, Obama on the left, and they were fighting for power. Pax Americana, in second technology, is giving with balance of power that is seething with rivalry and insecurity. Every day Donald Trump says China steal our jobs and I must bring back and this and that. But as I told you before, this is not true. Everywhere China sees America also trying to thwart its restrict, its encourage its moves. America always says this and that. I will show you later. In America, I live in America. Every day there's, China will bring, China will say, no good. Because when China grew up, of course, there is jealousy. As I said, it's like these two men fighting for this girl called ASEAN. Now, what has changed? Remember this fellow Nixon go to China and say, you must join the world. But China was so poor. And now, this is this year, Obama shakes China, but China said, hey, I have $3.1 trillion. You, and Obama. How do you know it? Yeah, China, America, now, but Obama knows about China. So Xi Jinping came to New York. I was there. And Donald Trump said, oh, China steal our job, this and that, just give him a hamburger. But Obama knows better. Even though he shake hands like that, Obama entertained Xi Jinping. I don't know how many of you know Mayo. You know? Mayo, yes. He's popular in China also. So Xi Jinping is sitting next to Obama listening to Mayo, and he gets very good dinner. Lobster roti restaurant. Chinese cook in New York make American cuisine with nurses in China, lobster soup. Anyway, Obama treated him like a VIP. But now comes the question. Before he stopped in New York, if you look at the map, before you go to New York, there is Seattle. Seattle is on the coast near California, up there. And in Seattle, he stopped there because he was the guest of Boeing. Xi Jinping was invited by companies. Again, Trump said, oh, just give him a hamburger. But these business companies know better than Trump. They give him, again, lavish dinner in Seattle. To his right was Jeff Bezos, Amazon. Number 2 was Warren Buffett. He's the big, richest man in the world, but maybe sometimes the Mexican is the richest man. Number 3, Jack Ma. Everyone knows Jack Ma. Yes, Alibaba and Tencent. So these businessmen, they know, that they have to honor this man, what's his name, Xi Jinping. Not just shouting, oh, you steal this and that. I don't know what will happen. Then there is Satya Nadella, Windows, Microsoft. I noticed you have Windows 10 also. So he was trying to sell Windows 10 to China. That's billions of people. Timothy Cook, Baidu, China's answer to Google. Google also is bad, so they have Baidu. So he was invited, and what did he do? He ordered not 3, not 30, but 300 Boeing aircraft. 300. Because you notice China has so many cities, so even for domestic travel, they need all these Boeing aircraft. Worth how much dollars? I think $38 billion. So that's why he was treated not to McDonald's like Donald Trump says, but the new joint venture there will be a joint venture, but it will not manufacture aircraft, but will interiors, paint and deliver aircraft to Chinese buyers. So there were joint ventures, but the Chinese are very clever, Once they start painting, but they start soon, they will be producing this aircraft. Because as I said, innovative, Chinese are very good. Used to be the Japanese, they imitate everything. Now Chinese. So here is the Boeing aircraft. Where does it get produced today? As you can see, the center fuselage is produced in Italy. The forward fuselage, Nagoya, Japan, and Europe, everywhere in the world. Landing gear. So, why is Boeing doing this? They want to be very benevolent. They're doing this for profit. So Donald Trump again wants to bring back all these jobs to America. Boeing is doing this for profit because that's the best way to make his aircraft, to be the cheapest way, so that air travel for Americans becomes cheaper because Boeing makes more profit. I sound like a businessman, but actually I'm not. Now take Apple, for instance. Apple, and you will see here, Apple, design and development is still in America. You must have heard from Silicon Valley, but I have 2 sons living there. It's produced in America by Chinese and Indians. Sourcing. Europe, Asia, China. So in China, only the manufacturing of Apple is done in China. 1 million Chinese are employed. USA warehousing, of course, and then distribution global. You know, you have to sell your Apple everywhere. In Cambodia also. So if you look at how Apple is produced, for 10 iPods, China only assembled it. These 1 million Apple workers in China only assembled. So the rest is Taiwan, Deutschland, is Germany, Korea. You see this? So this is what I'm saying. Everything production is now multinational all over the world. So again, to my friend Donald Trump, you want to bring all these jobs back, including this 1 million Chinese. Well, I have news for you. This 1 million Chinese who assemble. Yes, their wages are lower in China, but it's not only wages. That's the reason why. Because everyone knows wages, why does Apple move to Bangladesh? But there is also better skilled workers, not than Bangladesh, better skilled than America. And I have statistics for this. Because of the education system in China. So we had coffee this morning. Katie, my friend, says, why Cambodians all want to be accountant and businessmen, but you all want to be rich. But you should study engineering. You see? See, Katie, she just came from the US last night, but she likes to hear me. So she's jet lagged. But rankings in the world, this is for children who are 15 years, ranking in math and science. This is not communist data, this is from the OECD in Europe. And Singapore #1. South Korea Hong Kong, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, etc. Again, Asia is dominated. Where is the US? #28. So if Donald Trump wants to bring back these 1 million jobs to America, not only he has to pay more, but then the education level is less than China. It's #28. All the Chinese, Singapore has 80% Chinese also. Sorry, well, ethnic Chinese. Hong Kong, Chinese. South Korea, half Chinese. Japan, well, Asian people, you know what I mean. So now look at, too slow. So we talked today about dispute between an implication for ASEAN. Now there is this ASEAN and there is this problem about South China Sea. You know, there's a dispute between China and Vietnam, Malaysia, Taiwan, and the Philippines. So you say, why we are in Cambodia, why you talk about this dispute? Because of ASEAN, Cambodia get involved. In the year 2012, ASEAN summit was held in Cambodia. And Obama came from Myanmar and said, why didn't come here for Cambodia? I come for that. Obama is angry because the Prime Minister here has not included in the agenda the item about dispute, because China doesn't want this dispute to be discussed in the ASEAN. ASEAN fighting each other too. All this fighting each other, but still China wants to be saying that we don't discuss it in ASEAN. And again last month, Minister of Defense went, and they don't want to discuss. That means China doesn't want to be discussed, but America wants to be discussed. When one is able to be discussed. Well, this is just to tell you that, again, as I said about the awakening China, China has been humiliated in the past so much. After World War II, when Asia was not even this Asia was not even invited, let alone China, to discuss disputes about the territory. So that's why now China saying, you let me out in the past, here I am. Why you ignore me in the past? So as I said, children can be seen but not heard. And China was one of these children. Senkaku, these are all the little islands. Now they are building airfields on these islands. And so that China now domestic defense system become very important. About 3 months ago, China celebrated the celebration of. Can you hear me in the back like this? Can you hear?
Yeah.
Please raise your hand if you cannot hear. Okay, nobody can hear. Everybody can hear. Easier result this. You can hear, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, no problem. China had a parade, that you can see on YouTube this parade. 30 heads of government, including King Sihanouk was there. And Sihanouk, my boss Ban Ki-moon from the United Nations. And Putin, of course. America, of course, was not there. Jealously. 12,000 troops. Oh, you can watch on YouTube if you have nothing to do. And this is called anti-ship-carrier Phnom-Penh. It's called blue because blue is the color of the Marines. The rest of the weapons are called the usual military gray, like the color of the shirt. But this one is blue because this Phnom-Penh missile, one of them can drop on the American aircraft carrier and can destroy it. So China is so far ahead. That's why I study engineering, and not always accounting and business. This is a comparison between the two countries. China has more soldiers than America, but tanks, China has more tanks. Of course, tanks cannot invade America, but it's more for domestic. Aircraft. You see, China has now 1,700. Stealth fighters, these are the very expensive ones. China has very little. Heavy UAV, these are drones. China has nothing. Submarines, look at this, 69. So China is a big power now, and that's why they are worried in America. So now that was security. Now economically, Obama and Xi Jinping met in November with in three summits. They always go schedule the summits one after the other. The first one was in Antalya, Turkey. This is the summit of the Group of 20. As I said, after World War II, the Group of 7 are powerful. We are the world, America, UK, and so on. Now UK GDP is lower than Indonesia if you use PPP. So that's right. Now we have the Group of 20, including Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, etc. And they met in Turkey, but that time this was just after the Paris Accord, so they did not economy. Then they met in Manila. APEC is the Asia Pacific Economic Council. And then the US was proposing Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP. I saw in the paper now they suddenly want Cambodia to join. This is only 12 countries are in the TPP, but now they want Cambodia to join. You see? So rivalry with China. The Asia Pacific countries are colored here, but the ones that are the US want to promote TPP in order to exclude China, you see. And the US has excluded China, but so with 12 member states. But China and ASEAN have their own concept. RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Partnership, Economic Partnership, by ASEAN and its 6 dialogue partners. ASEAN, as you know, ASEAN 10, 6 dialogue partners: Japan, Korea, China, Australia, New Zealand, and India, excluding America. So here you will see the rivalry. That's why I said it's like Obama competing. Join me. Don't join them, China can. Join me. TPP, 12 members pushed by the US, excluding China. Now, look at the map. TPP includes Pacific. Pacific includes Chile, because the other side of the Pacific is Chile, Peru, 12 of them. Now, RCEP is ASEAN plus its 6 dialogue partners. So these are competing concepts. Now, TPP is much more sophisticated than RCEP because they want to also include labor laws, intellectual property, labor rights. For instance, Vietnam will be joining TPP, but they are still a communist country. They don't have labor unions in Vietnam unless it's sponsored by the government. They must free that. But as I said yesterday, suddenly there's a news that Cambodia is asked to join. So what I'm saying before, Obama came here 2012, human rights, blah, blah, blah. But now you realize that Cambodia is important. Otherwise, Cambodia becomes like a ripe apple falling in the hands of China. And John Kerry, Secretary of State, first one is Hillary Clinton, now she's not for president. Now John Kerry is coming here to join, to talk with Cambodia. So no more ignoring Cambodia because of human rights. So if you can see here, TPP is this one, the blue one, and RCEP is the yellow one. So some of them are members of both, as you can see in the middle. But this is not the only trick of China, I will tell you more than trick. So, as I said, it's concluded by end of 2015. Actually, this was already decided in Kuala Lumpur. This ASEAN has already established the ASEAN Economic Community. And January 1st, we starting the ASEAN Economic Community. These are the 10 leaders of ASEAN. You know which one is Cambodia, of course. And this is ASEAN Economic Community. So after 48 years, I was there when ASEAN was established in 48 years ago. Because I'm older than 48, I'm almost double it. But I gave him the picture of me when I'm young, But now I'm old. After more than 30 years. So ASEAN is a reality. It's a market of 622 million people, ASEAN. Free movement of goods, services, investment, and capital. So the idea is if ASEAN becomes one, you will have the tariff barriers lowered. So it becomes very powerful. China is powerful, US is powerful, ASEAN may be number 5 or 6. Together, if you are united, they hope to increase. Well, but of course, ASEAN is far away from European Union. It's more like a political movement now. The diversity, there's still lack of ASEAN identity. I will show quickly here because I want after that you to ask questions. There's a problem about corruption, of course. I don't know about Cambodia, but other countries have corruption. Intra-regional trade. Intra-regional trade means trade between ASEAN countries. Now, why is it so high in Laos? 64.9% in Laos. Compared to Europe, it's usually advanced countries that trade more between them. Because, like Germans, they produce Mercedes-Benz, and French people want to buy them, we trade. And German people want to buy Dutch cheese. But here, ASEAN, we all produce rice. So intra-regional trade is small, except for Laos, because they don't produce anything. Trade in services. But I want to go quickly over that because I want to. China has one more thing. These trade agreements for China is only one tool, but the last tool they have, like if you see Chinese movies, kung fu movie, they always have tricks, trick. And the last trick is I would depend on the $3.3 trillion. Yeah, this is just a question of how far ASEAN has progressed, but it's not really in the essence of this lecture. So I want to show you, importantly, the last trick of China. Have you seen kung fu movies? They always have one trick. So I'll go a little faster. This is the ASEAN economic growth. You see, so ASEAN in general has high economic growth, including Cambodia. Don't forget. Well, anybody who comes into the traffic jam this morning, I very much say Cambodia has grown very fast. Look at this. As I said, brown cafe in my street, there are 6 of them, brown cafe. But very good, better than Starbucks, Katie says, and she's an American. Better than Starbucks. What is better, the coffee or
the coffee and the atmosphere?
Really? So Cambodia can be number 1, brown cafe. Become the Starbucks in ASEAN. Yeah, Ambassador Sun Sun says brown cafe will establish in Myanmar. Where?
Yeah, planning. I have something like that. I'm going to see crossing Cambodia and then we'll be.
You see, Cambodians can be number 1, brown cafe. Also in Indonesia, we have 270 million people. A lot of brown cafe.
It's one of Cambodia's trademark.
What?
It's one of Cambodia's trademark.
That's what I said. You see, we are not stupid. In the old days, we consider stupid because we are colonies. Oh, stupid Cambodia, stupid Indonesia. We Europeans, we are number 1. No more now. Now, talking about China's influence in Cambodia, look at that. With the 3.3 trillion, that's why Obama started going with Cambodia is going for China. Now, this is not only Cambodia, they are all over the world, China, but in ASEAN, my country, Indonesia, for instance, doesn't have this penetration from China. Well, China, of course, has been very close to Cambodia throughout its history. Also the trading partner. Now I come with the last trick, as I said in the Kung Fu movie. China has its last trick because for them trade cooperation is not their main weapon for development, controlling the development in the region, but it is war. Anybody knows what is war? One Belt, One Road. And AIIB, anybody? Asian Investment Infrastructure Bank. You see, I'm up to date. Last night I wake up and just 3 days ago AIIB was inaugurated. You see, it's brand new this time. 16th January, today 93 days ago was established. Now, 57 member states. Cambodia will also soon become member. The U.S. doesn't like it because, as I said, U.S. has ADB Japan mostly, but U.S. World Bank and so on. They say, no, don't join that AIIB. That's Chinese state, But now AIIB, America's friends are joining AIIB. Korea, UK, Germany, Australia, because what it does is it will lend money for infrastructure development. You know what infrastructure is: building bridges, roads, trains. So sometimes we regard this as a rival. That's why I said the US doesn't want to join. Not only people want to join, they don't join, but now their best allies are all in AIIB. Would be a diplomatic triumph for China, in which global financial order, it says, it's dominated by the United States, and it's not adequately representing developing countries. China has so much money, but the World Bank is controlled by children, shut up, still. So China said, you don't want me to make the voices and World Bank? I join my own. So, one belt, one road. Where is the Silk Road? What is the Silk Road? You studies of history. Chinese silk went to Europe in the old days through the Silk Road. So sometimes 1,000 camels, all going to Europe, not to sell silk. But now in the new Silk Road, it is Chinese bullet train going to Europe. There's also the maritime road. Moluccas is part of my country. People don't know, Indonesia. Where is Indonesia? They always say. Also part of Bali, Moluccas is the Dutch people came to colonize Indonesia because they look for spices in Moluccas. This is the history now. But in the modern world, one belt was called the Silk Road and Maritime Road. So now China is going to start the Silk Road economic belt. You can see. And the blue one is the trade road. Xi Jinping is reviving the Silk Road, as I already said. He proposed a pass that was today not with camels, but with bullet train. China's bullet train are the best in the world. I'm not paid by China, but everyone even UK is ordering bullet train from China, so not Benny Widyono.
Could I interrupt you?
Yes.
Some students here have a class right now.
Oh, okay.
So if you want to leave now.
So as I said, now we don't use camels, but we use bullet train. And as I said again, UK and Holland ordered bullet train from China, so I'm not making propaganda for China. Europeans, they are not doing it, but they ordered the gas. China's high-speed rail system is the longest line from Beijing to Guangzhou. And we have seen Guangzhou before. And later they will go all the way to Kunming, and maybe they will also extend to Cambodia. There will be Chinese also helping to build the railroad in Cambodia. Before it was the Asian Development Bank, but they didn't have enough money, so now China is building the rest of the bullet train. High-speed railway, very, very fast. I've been on this bullet train. Investment is very big. Of course, there's also a dream. Xi Jinping has only $3.3 trillion, but this is, well, we cannot spend the whole 1.3 trillion on this, but the dream is always big. He will not, of course, spend it all by himself. Integral part of China's new diplomacy, reflecting its growing interest in they are also called the Chinese dream. Now, half of the students have left, but the downside of China's economy is today is in big trouble. Let us go for loans and grants. Well, we have seen this. I think I should have deleted it. So, as I said, today China is in trouble because instead of growing 10%, this last year they grew 6.9%. Now, Cambodia is also 7%, but if you are American, you know you are happy if the economy grows 2%. But China went from 10% to 6.9%. The whole world is panicking. During the second tectonic shift, they say if America catch a cold, sneezes, with sneezes, then Japan catch a cold, and we in the third world catch pneumonia. Now China sneezes, catch a cold, America, the whole world has pneumonia. The stock market last week collapsed and so on. And because you cannot go for export growth and urbanization. So what they have to do is they have to rebalance it towards consumption. Because these Chinese, as I said, these textile workers, they don't spend anything. So the money goes to their parents and it's in the bank. They have to spend more. Well, as I told you before, the rich people do spend in China. There are so many billionaires, but that's the rich. But the lower part, they don't spend. The rich people spend on crazy things. Well, of course, they spend on Lamborghinis, these are cars, very luxury cars, actually. But they are so rich, they buy chicken feet. Everyone here knows in the dim sum chicken feet, but imported from America. They're crazy, these rich people. You go to Walmart in China, you can buy chicken feet imported from South Carolina. That's how rich they are. Because they say it tastes better than Chinese chicken feet. And you can get here at AEON, very good chicken feet. I know one lady. There's an American furniture company called, I forgot, but it's very, Ethan Allen. Ethan Allen designs in America, just like the iPhone. And they sent to China to manufacture the Ethan Allen. Then they sent back to America to sell in America. But the Chinese billionaires buy the finished product from America. But you see, transportation has become so cheap now that people can do that. All these things that Donald Trump and China steal, because it's cheaper to produce in China and send back to America. And so it's all a matter of economics. Maybe Donald Trump should take my course. So what's happening is now China is rebalancing towards consumption. On the left there is a mall. It's maybe 10 times AEON Mall. With 70 football fields. Football is American football, not soccer. And this lady, of course, is selling Ford. As I said, Chinese cars are mostly produced by Ford and by General Motors. So American technology is still number one, you see, not only in car production. Take, for instance, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Here, everywhere there's KFC. So Americans, you can have, Satmon Ang, you can live here is Satmon Ang, but they all go to KFC, Stupid. No, not stupid. Americans, they know how to market. Walmart. Chinese should be able to sell goods, but Walmart is big in China, including Starbucks. Maybe they should start coffee, brown coffee in China, then really it becomes multi-millionaire before that. Okay. Well, this is just my conclusion about America and China. They should be friends with each other rather than competing with each other. You steal my jobs, this and that. They should be friends. And as far as the effect of China's growth on ASEAN, I have shown you the many ways, not just trade, but the overboard, the bullet trains, everything. Cambodia is one of the biggest beneficiary of American investment. So Cambodia is beneficiary. So China has selected Cambodia. As I said, Indonesia, we have not have so much Chinese investment. Especially Cambodia is a smaller country, but America has targeted. We have in our audience my friend Haijun Chan, who translated my book. He's from China, but he is now living in Phnom-Penh. And by the way, the book that we translated, my book is selling like hotcakes, 200 copies every day, not every day, every month. I wish it was every day. So as I said, now John Kerry and Washington, they start worrying. We must say good things about Cambodia. Not human rights. I come here for ASEAN, that's for you, Mr. Hussain. But now John Kerry comes here. So it's all this is just to show you how the world is one now. Yeah, you see it every day, of course. You eat sushi and whatever, but I'm putting it together. What we are all together. If China catch a cold, you cannot get bronchitis, but you have to be careful. So, this is the end of my talk.
Thank you very much, Dr. Widyono. We can open the questions to the floor. Maybe when you ask questions, please also identify yourself, where you come from, your institution, and please be precise with the questions. I'll start if there's no problem.
Okay. First of all, my name is Panya and I'm from Pakistan. I'm actually a suspended student. Anyway, my question is, what is, like, China is going to be, is most definitely going to be a superpower in the future. But what is the obstacle or barrier that might like drag it down a little bit? But I think, on top of my head, I think it's probably the language, because most of the people in the world speak English or think that English is an international language, not Chinese. What is your
Thank you.
idea?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. About language, yes, that's why Haijun translated my book into Chinese. But for the Chinese aid workers who come here, they all buy it because they want to know about Cambodia. Now about the downside, actually I have another lecture about that. Just to say quickly. You see, I have my new trick. China has to, as I said, to rebalance from export to buy luxury cars and so on, but it has to transform the model of communism. You see, until now, communism works, feverish, I build city there, I build there. You girls who come and work at the city, but the thing is not, you want them to consume, but they have to transform their so instead of spending on splashy, also the downside that you asked is that China may be in big trouble. So now comes the half of them saying that I think it's okay, but China is last year, as I said, very low, and next year this year might become even lower because they cannot force people to consume. The rich people, as I said, they buy chicken feet from cow, but there's no middle class like there is in Europe. There's not enough middle class. And they have ghost cities, bridges, airports, ghost cities, they should stop that. But there's a lot of rhetoric, rhetoric, right? They start a lot of talk at the highest level. they don't know how to do it because they have to introduce capitalism. They already do capitalism, but still it's controlled by communism. Take the stock market in China. It's supposed to be like stock market here, buying and selling. But when the stock market collapses, suddenly communism comes in and the government says you cannot sell. So if you ask, the basic question is, how far will they go to abandoning communism? They don't want to. They still want to control. So far, communism has helped because the other big giant is India. India infrastructure is hopeless. China has all this bullet train and so on because China is just saying there shall be bullet trains, there shall be bridges, there shall be ghost cities. India is not communist in democracy. But now I understand what we will do. There shall be consumption. But the rich people they buy it. So how far are they willing to give up communism? That's the main problem. Now, one thing that people don't know, there is riots everywhere actually, but locally. I think Nigel can explain. They're local, but it's not national riots. It's talking about environment, about land issues. There's a lot of things. So, from the experts of economics that are studied, this year will be even worse than 2015. This is the downside of China. To boost efficiency, state-owned enterprise. State-owned is communist-owned. The government owns these factories. They should dominate many economic sectors, you see. So they should be willing to turn this to private enterprise. So as I said, communism worked very fine for 20 years, export, urbanization. But now, as I say there, so you ask, the downturn could be worse now. This is not only me talking, economic expert. This is the one thing about consumption in China. The World Bank says the Chinese still consume very little. 40% of the GDP is for consumption, compared to 55% and 68%. Well, I'm not saying that 68% is good because of that. That means Americans they consume, but they cannot even earn. They buy on installment. And then they buy everything, cars and so on. That's why there's deficit. But China wants to increase, if they want to continue to grow the economy, they must grow from 40% to higher. Only the very billionaires they spend, but middle class is missing.
Like to save money.
Yes. And you cannot force them. Then also there is a corruption drive, anti-corruption drive. From citizens, you can get killed in China if you are corrupt. So they have less spending on the rich, even the very rich, on jewelry or chocolates to account. Security will be another question. This is another question. So another question. Is that my answer?
Yes.
Yes.
My question, my name is Benny Widyono, academic affairs here. When you look at the latest development in East Asia, so Taiwan has a new president that is not very pro-China. Japan and South Korea signed a recent deal regarding the comfort domain issue, which allows them to be cooperating, and this is to the advantage of the US. And with the rising nationalism in Vietnam and Philippines, do you think these developments will embolden the US to pivot to Asia stronger, and will this lead to conflict?
Thank you. Very good question as always. Talking about this pivot, until now the pivot to Asia is only token, as you said. Now the question of Taiwan is foremost. Already Xi Jinping said, hey, don't talk about independence. That's a no-no. You become independent, my dome-flying missiles will be there. Now, the question is, of course, what will America do? Is America willing to go to war about Taiwan? I'm not so sure. No, the comfort women issue is good, but Vietnam is a very interesting case. Was the biggest enemy of America, but now Vietnam is the one who invited America. And hey, you don't live here. I will be the victim of this Chinese. Philippines is very angry because I mentioned all these islands, This is disputed by Philippines and so on. China is now building land there. And even aircraft can land there now. So it is scary, as you said. Now, I'm living in America. I give this lecture in America. The Americans are worried, how far should we go? Should we defend Taiwan and have nuclear war? Because if this lady is going to China, is going to President China, is going to declare independence, China is going, they say, they can go into Phnom-Penh. So America now is already stretched. Iraq, Syria, whatever. And they have no money there. The war in Iraq was financed by Chinese because there's $3.3 trillion. $1.3 trillion they buy American bonds. That means America is borrowing from China. So China exports to America more than America to China. So they have this money in the bank and America borrows from China from them. So they cannot afford to have another war. Well, when you look at the statistics of balance, of course, they have many tanks in China, but tanks are not going to go to Taiwan. But they have aircraft, they have this Stamford missile. So my answer is I don't know, because in America there is a debate of but I don't think this lady, I hope, will not declare independence because she's committing suicide. Yeah, but this Taiwan, this Japan and South Korea, of course, there is also this guy, Kim Jong-un, Gangnam Style. Yes.
I think the presentation did a good job to look at some of the economic links and corporate links between U.S. and China in order to decrease the discussion about rivalry and power politics. But I think maybe that there's still a bit of a state-centric focus to your approach, which maybe isn't as relevant today as it used to be. We should be looking more at the corporations and the corporate links between the countries and who's truly benefiting in that sense. And then maybe there's not such a big China-US divide, which you point out in your example of the iPhone and the cars and so on. My question though is, when you had one slide that compared the two trade agreements, the APEC and the TPP, and by all standards, the TPP was a better agreement, at least according, again, the source here is the Wall Street Journal, so we're not sure if we can completely trust it. But I would like to know your opinion. What do you think is the better of the two trade agreements?
Well, in terms of quality, TPP is better. As I said, I have there a slide. TPP talks about environment, labor law, and so on. Exactly. But even ASEAN economic community, there is a big divide. I went quickly through that because it's not entirely relevant. But going back to your question, I can go back to the slide. Okay, well, we don't need to go. But even ASEAN economic community, there is a big divide between the CLVM, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Myanmar. There's a 4 on the lower part, and then the 6. They are more advanced. And because it's easy in trade agreements to just lower the tariff barriers to 0. But if there is non-tariff barriers, meaning if you try to import something here, at the customs, there's so much trouble. So the non-tariff barriers, there's a big divide between CLVM. So even there is a question of a big divide, let alone TPP. So TPP is superior. And that's why actually America selected the advanced countries, Japan, Singapore, but now suddenly Cambodia. Now going to your corporate, I thought I showed that, carefully, that there is a difference between what Donald Trump says and what the corporation says. Donald Trump said give him hamburgers. And I'm not joking, because from the latest statistics, Donald Trump may be the next president. But as you said, I proved it. The corporate world sees it differently. Boeing is producing, is whining and dining because they benefit from China trade. So I'm sure if Donald Trump becomes president, he has to realize that. So you're right, that there is a difference between state sponsors but Obama sees it a little bit. That's why he treated Deng Xiaoping, but Xi Jinping, not Deng Xiaoping. One is Deng Xiaoping, one is Ping, Xi Jinping. Two Pings. As I said, Obama also saw this, what you said, that we have to see, so the corporate world knows this. And it's different, as you said, from the government side. But the government side should look also at this corporate world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think even with the military spending, we have to ask, what are the companies that are making these military products? If they are benefiting from military spending on both sides of the divide.
Oh yeah, I'm well aware of this economic corporate side. That's why I take a lot of pains finding these slides about Boeing and iPhone, iPad. You cannot easily get them. But there is this divide between corporations. By the way, it's not only Donald Trump who wants jobs back. It's Bernie Sanders. So on the left there is Bernie Sanders, who is a leftist, and Donald Trump. They all want their jobs back to America. Yes, Mr.
Okay. My name is Wong Meng. I come from the Royal Family Cambodia. My question regarding the South China Sea issue.
Yes.
I want to ask that why China and US want to be a Superman along the South China Sea issue.
Why do they want what?
Want to be a Superman.
Okay. Well, China says, this is my area. You can dominate Cuba and all that. This is my area. America says, oh, no, I have to boss the whole world. So they want to, these are two who dominate the world, you see. But when you are a big power, you cannot say, oh, that's not my problem. That's their problem. Because, as I said, Vietnam, who is a former enemy of America, the Vietnam War, how many Vietnamese got killed. Vietnam now asks America, please, come back here against the Chinese, Vietnam is start saying this. So why? They have to, if America withdraw from here, it's finished. But you see, America has these aircraft carriers, 12 of them, I said. They go to trooping, but they cannot go in the Pacific, and it's because there is Phnom-Penh. If they create trouble, Phnom-Penh, one missile and finish. So they want to dominate. This is what the nature is of superpowers. That's why I said the tectonic shift. In the old days it is Britain, Britain rules the world. Then America ruled the world. But now there is China. So that's why I see, Obama and so they want to fight for domination. But China says, this is my area. And as I said, during the San Francisco Treaty, I was not even invited. As I said, in the old days, after World War II, children, means all the red countries, shut up, we will decide for you. So now China says, no, you cannot shut me up. I'm big. So, why if you shut me up? So exactly your particular question, I showed you when there was a treaty in San Francisco about the China Sea. So in the old days, we are like kid children, we can, and those big powers decide this, decide that. Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Benny. I'm Srien. I'm from the Center for Khmer Studies. I want to ask you one question about the ASEAN. Given that given this rivalry between the U.S. and China, and given the fact that ASEAN itself is not one, it's two at least, as you said, the more advanced ASEAN and the less developed ASEAN. I wonder in what way and how these less developed ASEANs can benefit from this rivalry between China and the U.S.
Well, you see, first of all, you have to create the unity of ASEAN. You see, the ASEAN must be united among themselves, meaning they have to, the CLVM should go up to the standard of Singapore and so on. Then if we are united, then ASEAN will say, you know, I have big power too, you shut up. So that's, to me, that's the main thing, because like Cambodia, well, ASEAN as a whole, as I said, can be like a political, you know, and America and China are fighting for the political, so you get from both, you know. You get China to build your infrastructure, and America now become, John Kerry comes here, you know, this and that. So, yeah, just reading first and then you see what she had before.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'm actually coming from a different background, not economic side, something different. But regarding your presentation, I see a paradox which is not, which has not been addressed, particularly the environmental change and the economic growth. When we're talking about the rise of China, so one of your slides demonstrates some indicator about the increasing numbers of population, the production of cars, and all of these things. And they seem to be on the detriment of the national resources that we are having. And given the fact that we are having sort of a environmental problem, increase of heat in the world, is it a risk, or is it something that the world should be changing in the base of development rather than based on the economic, theory of development?
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah, please finish.
yeah.
No, this is a very great question. I have a PhD in economics, but nowadays it's sustainable development. You're right. And environment, of course, plays a big role. We just had a big conference on climate change in Paris, and the UN, I'm from the United Nations. This is the you're right, it's the most important problem, is this greenhouse gases. But China, for the first time, has signed this Paris Agreement. They want to also reduce this greenhouse. You are right that China has been so far ignoring environment. Now going back to TPP versus RCEP, TPP placed a lot of emphasis on the environment. But China has just now realized that they cannot do it. They had Beijing was covered by smog for days, 1 week sometimes. So environment is a big thing. Of course, in America, you're Australian.
No, I'm not. Cambodian,
but your accent is Australian.
Yeah, it's a bit.
Yeah, no, because America, there is now rivalry between Democrats and Republicans. You know that, right?
Yeah.
For the presidential election. Now the Republicans say, Obama talk about environment so much. That's not a big problem. It is a big problem. So you are right, I mean, this is the problem of the next century. So as an economist, I have to learn also about environment. And we talk about sustainable development now, not just economic GDP is not enough.
Can I just add a bit? I'm not responding to what you were saying, but something that we said earlier about Cambodia. Depicting Cambodia as an example of China in terms of its rate of growth. And I would like to argue that this is a bit misleading because Cambodia is different to China in many ways. And I would not like to talk about that. But given the current situation of Cambodian, of some sort of a movement within the country demanding for a consideration on natural resource protection or whatsoever, and the rise of capitalism, also the rise of capitalism in Cambodia. So it's misleading in the term that, well, should Cambodia be going to this sort of pathway of development rather than a development that is measured, for example, based on the happiness, than the GDP growth or economic growth? I'm also wondering whether all Chinese, in the context of their economic growth, are they happy? Well, not in the sense that they are having money, but in...
Mine is, as you said, or somebody else said, is too much oriented towards GDP. No, there's a lot of unhappiness in China, I talk about smoke, figuring out. But in particular way, what you said, of course, there is this problem, about these natural resources, and it's all connected to environment, and so there is big dangers. But I said at least now they are signing this agreement to reduce their greenhouse gases. But in general, there is, you see, that's why I said there is a similarity. I'm not saying that Cambodia is like China, but similarity in that they put GDP, they don't think about environment. That's my saying, and what's the similarity. Of course, Cambodia is small, China is big, but similarity, urbanization. You don't have to look far, or empty apartments here also, you see, and less. That's the problem, you see. If you have, now China used to be centrally planned, communist. Used to be, everything is planned by the government, but now they let private enterprise overtake, so it's all confused, basically. And that's why I say now China is in a mess, because they want to, how far can they go in capitalism? To take place. So yes, so it's my picture may be too rosy, but that's why I said there is a similarity. Growth without worry, poor people getting poorer, And you?
Yeah, my question was when we talk about ASEAN, for me it's not clear when you said US and China or something like fighting for a beautiful woman, to take this metaphor, but I'm not sure who do they talk to. Because if we take, for example, the European Union, we have what we call in French a délégation de souveraineté. I don't know how you say it, but it means that each country give up a little bit of its power to an above organization. But with ASEAN, you tell me if I'm wrong, we don't have this kind of organization. So, when you say they fight for ASEAN, who do they talk to? Because from what I understand, actually, is it that they talk to national governments, which will not be ASEAN, but national countries? Do they talk to private enterprise? Who do they talk to when they fight? We have a head with a body in European Union, but what is the head of ASEAN?
Yeah, so two questions actually. One is the delegation of,
sorry?
What did you say?
Une délégation de souveraineté.
What he is saying is, if you have a European Union, you have to delegate surrender some of your authority to the common and to European Union. The same here, there is none of that. You are right. Nobody will. I mean, this ASEAN Secretariat is very small. I have to give something. I went quickly over there because it was not the main topic. Here, well, there is also lack of administrative capacity.
And political capacity.
Oh yeah, no, yes. So as I said, this ASEAN Economic Community faces many problems. But look at this. They have only 17 million in annual budget. European Union, of course, Europe is much bigger. It has a big governance in Brussels. So the delegation of authority, or I said surrender your authority. Here, they don't want to surrender to ASEAN Secretariat. I know these people, they are in Jakarta. They have no power. No, on a bigger scale, you know, the UN and UN, you know, the people always say, oh, UN has no power, just talk only. NATO, no action, talk only. But without UN, maybe we had World War III already. So that's, well, it's international law, you know.
But
yes.
The question was, when you're talking about the rivalry between two countries, who do they talk to?
Okay, the rivalry, they have to talk with the governments, you see.
So is it ASEAN?
Well, in ASEAN, it's not the ASEAN Secretariat, but you know, well, the TPP, for instance, they have to talk with the governments individually. But what you are saying is, do they talk to ASEAN Economic Community? Not yet. As I said, you know, the ASEAN has a very little infrastructure. You cannot talk to ASEAN Secretariat in Jakarta. It's very small. So, very good question, because whom do you talk to, you know? Can you say, oh, if I talk to you, can you still make sure that all ASEAN agree? Not yet. So, all this talk about ASEAN Economic Community is to me a big talking, but not yet. He and you, Ambassador, he already had his hand up.
Sorry, I beat you to the punch. Benny, my name is Jose Mora, I teach at AUPP. Thank you for coming and appreciate that.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, well, that's my pleasure. But one point and probably, or one observation and then 2 points in there. In some respects, I think the Kondratiev wave cycle has already predicted there will be a hegemonic transition. Now, the issue is the terms of the hegemonic transition. The capitalist system cannot work unless there's a hegemon. Someone needs to pay for the public goods.
Yes.
Someone needs to carry the costs because everybody else free rides. That's just the nature of the system.
Yeah.
The thing is how you deal with that. So the transition can go in different ways. When the U.S. took over from Great Britain, the control of Latin America, there were conflicts. After all, they fought 2 wars. So it was not a happy-go-lucky sort of relationship. There was conflict. But eventually Great Britain surrendered its control of the Western Hemisphere and allowed the local hegemon to assume control. Okay, basically the comparisons of Mearsheimer between the Caribbean and the Southeast Asia Sea are very similar, and they should be considered as parallels. When we want to know about future, we need to think in terms of what does history tell us. So in some respects, transition doesn't need to be conflictual, but there's bound to be a transition. The thing is, can we buy China today at its current costs? Can we cash in right now instead of waiting further down the line and building a deeper relationship? The issue of trade that somebody else had mentioned, I think is very important. But we should not be, let's say, obfuscated by the mirage of trade. Norman Angell had already predicted in 1910 there will be no more wars because European powers are too economically interdependent. He was proven wrong just 4 years later. So it doesn't mean that nothing will happen. It means, just like in Clausewitz, the fog of war, how can we use our training to further and kind of prepare ahead of time to cash in China today, to tie them into the system, prepare them to be the next hegemon of the capitalist system so that it continues to progress. Good, bad, or different, whether capitalism is going to be more green or less green, it doesn't matter. It's just, the political economy of it is, can we cash them in now while the prices are attainable?
Well, thank you very much for your very well articulated comment. He and I were professors at UConn together, but one day I told him about Cambodia and he got so excited and he moved in. Yeah, he said, God sent me to Cambodia. But Buddha also. So that was a very good comment. We used to talk like this all the time, so that was not a question. So I'm very happy. If you want to hear more, you should enroll in AU. How much question? Yes,
Thank you, Benny. Thank you. I appreciate so much your presentation. I just have an observation, not to put your question. Of course, maybe one question, but it's a mega question, but very quick answer from you. It's very very easy question. Very easy, and you will have a very short answer. But observation, what Siem, Lucia, and also gentleman from Monsieur
Ashton.
The question is something interrelated between the two, because it's something about ASEAN framework. Yeah. It's very important because you have to set the whole policy to work the two giants. I mean, you know, you're just talking about the rivalry between the two, and everybody concerned about this, not in terms of how to do this in a negative way, but we want that to be a positive thing, a positive way as how we can have some sort of harmony between our foreign policy, the common foreign policy of ASEAN toward the two superpower country, I mean that the two giants. In terms of this, we need to know that we have to shape our house first. And very important that ASEAN now try to promote this in the regional integration process in terms of economic setting, but also political setting. You see, we had 3 periods at this moment according to the new charter. I'm not especially in ASEAN, but I'm now foreign policy because of my experience in the past. But I had my degree all the time from ASEAN. So I just want to point out that ASEAN in EU, there's certain similarity, but they are different, many different, and we try to aspire to do something like EU, but we don't know whether we have learned a lot, we have some sort of engagement with European countries and also with other countries in other regions also. You see, this is something very important that if you just give perspective of ASEAN structure, you see the membership of ASEAN, they are so diverse in terms of political structure, in terms of economic level of development differences, also diversity in terms of cultural interaction. But we try to do it. That's why we have ASEAN Economic Community, we have ASEAN Social Community, we have a political, of course, pillar, another pillar, political community. It's very important that the three have to go together. And this we need to do in ASEAN way. We used to say it all the time, but I know that it's very important. But this is something that Professor Benny already put this, you can see on the slide here. But at the same time, I acknowledge, and the question is very relevant, very pertinent in the context of ASEAN, how we can do. In the context of ASEAN, you also have different kind, a variety of sub-regional framework. You have ASEAN Cooperation Dialogue framework, initiated by Sinamatra over the part from Thailand. You have also ASEAN Europe ASEAN. I've been involved, I know that. How we can do that is right in order. You have also sub-regional framework like Mekong River Commission, ADB regional, AGMS, Greater Mekong Sub-region, and we're just talking about CLPB, CLT, or the corner, or the triangle economic cooperation. Because everything that we try to do is to concentrate on economic side. But from the political side, they need a lot to do with respect to how to promote capacity building. And this is something that I just give some of as an example. This is something I would like just to share, with the professor. But I know the professor maybe he knows better than me how to do more, Dr. Benny. Now the question for me, do you optimistic or pessimistic with respect to the two giants, rising of China on one side and the concern from the United States on the side?
Optimistic in the relation between the two?
Of course, optimistic in relationship because we have also lesson learned from the past during the Cold War. During the Cold War, I was in Eastern European country when I was young. And you see Russia, Soviet Union, from the Soviet Union, they tried to do something reform during the time of Gorbachev, but they could not succeed in reforming the country or the bloc structure. and then it's a collapse. But China is very smart. China takes capitalism in a liberal economy, but at the same time they still have control in terms of the political structure. But now it's something become relevant in the context of two giants. But I don't see that this is, are we not living in a bipolar world or morally polar world? This is very important.
So what is your specific question?
This is just a question, short one. I know that the time constraint, I don't want to burn you.
Ambassador Sun Sun, by the way, is going to teach next semester here, and you can see he's an excellent professor, so you can take his course. So I think you put it, but you know, the ASEAN way can be a very bad thing too. ASEAN way, you see. The ASEAN way is always consensus. So you must have consensus all the time, and that sometimes takes years even. So
it's a long way.
Well, so about the bipolar, yeah, that's another thing. About the new Cold War, is it the new Cold War? Of course, it's not the same as the old Cold War. But bipolar, yes, because there is European Union. But I'm concentrating on China and US for this region. But in Europe, of course, the competition is not between China and US, but Vladimir Putin and Obama. So about Middle East, for instance, Vladimir Putin is also a power player there. But yeah, you know, sorry, you know about the ASEAN way. So you mentioned, you know, about which do we talk to? You know, yeah. I said the ASEAN way can be impediment because the ASEAN way means they always have to have consensus. So it's very difficult to always.
It's going to take time to my knowledge.
By the way, this is my nephew, just came from Melbourne 4 days ago to listen to this lecture. It's the first time to Cambodia. So, any questions?
Regarding to Mr. Ambassador.
Same question.
Yeah. Sorry, but I also have a question about USSR or Russia.
Yeah.
How big is the role of Russia in escalating the conflicts of the United States and China and ASEAN? Is it still a relevant factor, or
Well, you mentioned rightly. You said USSR, Russia. But this is two different things.
Oh, okay.
USSR,
current
Russia. No, there's nothing to it. First of all, they have no money. China has all the money. Oil is the only commodity of Russia, and this morning it's at $29 per barrel. It drop all the time. So Putin's role here is zero. But in Europe, of course, precisely because of what we say, USSR, he wants to recreate the USSR. As you know, the difference between Russia and USSR is the breakup of Soviet Union into many small countries. You know, Ukraine, Belarus, and all that who used to be part of Soviet Union. And Putin wants to create back to the old Soviet Union. That's why first Georgia, and then now Ukraine, and so on.
Thank you very much. We have a very lively discussion. We'd like to invite everyone for refreshments outside of the discussion, and the questions can continue. Thank you very much for